That novels are, in fact, I argue that about the fact that we can enjoy seriously and deeply entertain thoughts that contradict, in fact, deeply antagonize each other, yet we have no worry about that, that novels show this capacity of human mind better than anything else. These are the things that I wanted to write about. I think I always have a thematic subject that I want to dramatize, enlarge, highlight, but then focus it on almost most of the time in Istanbul, what I know, the city that I know in my life. That is how I wrote and ventured into the story of a man, one man's infatuation with a twice removed cousin from a lower class, chronicling the life of and culture of sexual politics, cultural everyday rituals. It is also full of joys of pinning down the cultural nuances of marriage in 60s, 70s, the taboo of virginity, Islam and sex outside of marriage, westernization. These are all my subjects. Maybe we'll take some questions.
We have a little bit more time, so
okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll take some more questions from me. I'm running the show for another 10 minutes or so.
No, from the public, I say.
Yeah, we've got time for that. Well, when you're saying what you were right now, I thought of that moment in the museum where Kemal falls in love with Fusun, and he feels a kind of shock to his nature because he doesn't know what's happening to him, and he's going to get engaged soon, and he feels as if he has the intimations of another way of knowing, and that's what you were saying about how you can hold multiple realities together at the same time. I thought that when I was reading it, it seems to me there are two kinds of romantic novels. There's one, to put it in a very short way, there's one kind of romantic novel where nothing is allowed to the lovers, and therefore they go through various struggles and the society taboos and get through to the end. And there's another kind of romantic novel which is more like the modern Western romantic novel where everything is allowed. I mean, if you meet someone, you can go home with them that very night, you can hook up, whatever you want is allowed to you. But this kind of space is also just as difficult a space as one of absolute restriction. And what's impressive about the Museum of Innocence is that both kinds of novel are inside this book. Early on, when he meets Kemal,
it's like Romeo and Juliet have sex at the beginning, and then, in fact, in a convincing way, they are Romeo and Juliet again. This is more or less the Museum of Innocence. The subject there, actually, I think the subject is enjoying all kinds of things, or not enjoying all kinds of things. It is, I think, beyond the Museum of Innocence is a novel about love, but once you say it, everyone expects something like a pop song. All the culture of love is about putting love on a pedestal and saying, oh my God, what a beautiful thing love is. And my novel is not saying that. In fact, saying the other way, oh my love, oh my God, what a terrible thing it says. Of course, in a very respectful way. In the end, when you finish the novel, I hope it makes you can decide about that. My challenge was this, that also when I write a political novel, everyone has, when they write a political novel, has an idea. The writers have an idea of political novel, politics, and identifying the problems of identifying with a cause or not. But here in Museum of Innocence, in Museum of Innocence, I deliberately wrote about a book on love, but I deliberately also decided this will not put love on a pedestal. It will not be my God, these lovers, it will not be like Romeo and Juliet, how much they endured, how much they suffered. So love is a very sweet thing. Please, let's not be embarrassed about falling in love. My book is not about these things, though it goes into all of these subjects, explores them, looks at them from various points of view.
Well, in Museum of Innocence, Kemal seems to me not just like one of the great lovers of world literature, he's also one of the great thieves of world literature. He's always stealing stuff because from Fusun's house, memories of the times together, napkins, cups.
I argue in the book that human beings, or at least seen through the point of view of the 1960s Istanbul upper class men, that human beings have the capacity to attach to other human beings. This we all know. Then we can transfer our attachment to objects. That whether it's a lovely object, good object, bad object, we attach to things which have, as Proust had taught us, the power to bring us back the past that is forgotten, the past that we all want to preserve but don't know how to preserve, and try to open this subject. We get attached to things because things bring us back the past. And then I argue also that collector, that everyone falls in love, that is very common again to human heart. If it's out, there is something called an eternal human heart. We all get attached to things and put together, gather things, but it's only in Western civilization that gathered things are called a collection. There is a bit difference between a person who gathers things and a person who collects things, because we call a gathering of objects a collection if there is a logic, story behind it. Kemal's objects, he collects so many things of Füsun, is a gathering at the first, but now there is a story. Museum of Innocence now, that is a collection. You love this bottle, you love the memories that are associated with this bottle, suddenly you began collecting bottles, all of bottles that represent all of my life. There is perhaps, I also argue, some broken side to your heart because you don't know why you do it, you collect it. I argue in Museum of Innocence that like so many things, like novels, like orchestral music, like post-Renaissance painting, museums and collections are Western inventions. Once gathered objects are collections, they're honorable. You don't hide them as a sin. You don't say, I am in love and for strange reason I'm collecting this. Don't see them. You say, no, for some reason I collected all the bottles of soda bottles of India. Here's a collection. Why don't government give me money and I do a museum here, you say. And then there opens and this and that. And that's how you preserve history. Museum of Innocence is also about not only attachment to objects, and after attachment we have gatherings, and how gatherings of objects may in future turn out to be collections. Collection means categorizing, cataloging, putting, embracing, and lending meaning to objects through stories. In fact, all of my novels are giving objects an aura, a depth, a meaning through stories, and that's what novels do. They patiently describe, pin down, dramatize objects in history. I am that kind of novelist. There are novelists who write dramas through only verbs. We read 5 pages of Dostoevsky. There is such a drama that we remember it till the rest of our lives. But then when we think of it, there is not a picture. There are other kind of writers, like Proust, like Tolstoy, who dramatize the scene. We remember, it stays with us, but also we remember along with objects, pictures, things. I am that kind of writer, that I operate in your minds through pictures, perhaps because I'm a failed painter.
All right, I have one last question for you, after which we're going to have questions from the audience. I've always been delighted by your narrative structure, the way you organize your material. And I noticed in Museum of Innocence, in the beginning, the chapters run very fast. The first 100 pages, there are 25 chapters. And then there's suddenly the long scene of Kemal's engagement party, in which 50 or 60 characters go in and out. And the chapter is set in 1975, and one of the characters who comes to Kemal's wedding engagement party is 23-year-old Orhan Pamuk, who is not happy with what's going on. He sits in a corner and doesn't engage with anybody. I love that large set piece when so many characters go in and out and so much happens on that evening. It's all about like a dance of men and women in a public space. You want to say something about your narrative work?
Yeah, okay. First, I appear in my novels, but that's not a big point. That it's slightly like it's not my appearance in my novels is not like Borgesian. I'm not implying deep things about fiction and reality. I'm just saying that, you know, I just want to be here. Can I appear? Perhaps more like a Hitchcock appearance in a film. Also, there are also narrative reasons that I want in each story, I want the reader also consider who is telling this story. Why do we see this bottle instead of that object? And I want the reader to also pay attention to this kind of self-conscious, sentimentally craftsman-like, that is relating to craft of the fiction writer. Not necessarily you may enjoy this, not necessarily you're required to ask scholarly questions, but these questions, I argue, can be playful, and that's why I introduce myself as a fictional figure into my novels. But after I publish my novels, for example, as this happened in Snow, a friend of mine said, well, then after that you made a pass to your dead friend's girlfriend. Orhan, a friend of mine, perhaps a traditional friend, told me that in fact there is an Orhan in my books, but that doesn't mean that I'm in the book. As you see, I'm not, I'm here.
All right.
Maybe we take questions.
Yes, questions please.
Yes.
Somebody's going to come around with a
Please
mic.
make the questions brief.
This isn't about your writing, but more about the art of the novel in general. And you had made a statement today that, that in a novel, much like the capacity of the human mind, we entertain thoughts that would contradict and also antagonize each other. But is it also not sometimes the bias and the predilection of the reader that affects that precarious balance between such contradictions?
But I didn't, the last sentence I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
Is it also not the reader that affects the balance between the contradictions, and also is it not important to have such a moment?
And a novel in the end is realized with the reader. We write down words, reader reads the words, shoots them into images and thoughts in his or her mind, entertains them, but we never try to resolve or patronize or oversee the colors of the contradiction or drama. Let the reader enjoy, put the things so that electricity will be formed in the reader's imagination. Yes, yes.
Well, I'm sorry I'm again going on the Museum of Innocence because I think too much of Museum of Innocence.
Would you please hold it close to your
sure,
mouth and louder and shorter?
Yeah, shorter. So may I sit down? The point, firstly I must say this is the only book I've read of yours, and it is a fantastic book, 530 pages to be precise, read in 3 days' time.
Thank you.
In English.
They will think you're my friend, and that's why I gave you the microphone.
No,
please.
No, yeah, I'm getting little precedence. The point I am going to make, firstly I must congratulate of course you, but more than you, the translator. She has done an excellent job in the English, and I think that's what Dr. Karan Singh was saying, that if the translation is good, then that makes the sense. I think it has been translated by...
Maybe I'll sum up the question. The translation of Museum of Innocence is very good. I will take the next question.
No, I need to ask one more question. Last point I must say...
Yeah, but please ask a question.
Yeah. Sorry, okay. No question, but observation that it gives the chemistry to the Indian.
Okay. Yes.
Mr. Pamuk, you spoke about how the heart is the same and how you document personal reactions to social events. Now, I read that you are studying to be an architect and that you spent most of your life from the age of 22 to 30 at home doing little but writing. Now, circumstances in Turkey, I presume, are very different from those in the West. So there must have been a lot of social interrogation and a lot of social finger pointing as to how he's managing to do little but
let
right.
me talk about that. Thank you. Okay.
So how did you deal with that?
Yes, I understood. The question is, maybe I repeat, you were studying architecture, then you dropped out, then of course your social, my relatives, people who care about me, yes, they were worried. But he's saying, how did you deal with this? I would say that, in fact, my father gave me pocket money till the age of 31. This you laugh about, but was an embarrassment, but was not an embarrassment it would be a greater embarrassment if I were living in Europe or America, if I were living in West. The family is stronger, was stronger in Turkey, and the embarrassment of the family was more protected. That in the end, especially my mother, definitely wanted me to go out into the wilderness of life, is to take out my sword and fight for bread and pan, for bread and butter, and then come back. Then you deserve to write your novel or whatever you want to do. She said very plainly, almost with the same words I am using now. This is not only a Turkish problem, not only my problem, this is an eternal problem. I dramatized and wrote about this in my Istanbul book, and that book is probably translated to 40 languages, and I went to many of them, and I had seen youngsters, readers who are moved by this chapters which chronicle my embarrassment and determination to be a writer and drop out of university. But in West, I will say, in countries like United States, you would be having more hard time, more pressure, more social pressure. I remember just before the year I published my first novel in Turkey, I was struggling still to get in print in Turkey. I sometimes make this joke that I'm translated to 58 languages. Getting published in Turkey was the hardest. And I used to refuse to go to parties because I was 30 years old, and people would say, so what do you do, Orhan? And I would say, I'm writing a novel, I'm a novelist. And were they published? No. That was an embarrassment. Again, underlining the fact that lesser in my part of the world, but this is also related to in my part of the world at that time, and still is. There are no funds, no foundations, no organizations, no creative writing schools, and no protection from higher authorities. If they don't put you in jail, that's a great gift. Continue writing. That was the attitude. So, answering your question, it was an embarrassment, but not as dramatical as it would have been in, say, in New York. It was tolerable. That embarrassment.
Gentleman there.
Yes.
Sir, my name? Yes. Sir, my question is about the Museum of Innocence. In this, you tend to give more weightage or more emphasis on the philosophical aspect of love, as opposed to the physical or the conventional aspect. Because at times the main protagonist, Camel, his love looks at times without hope, but he continues to meet the girl on a daily basis. So in real life, do you feel that the philosophical aspect of love has more depth than the physical aspect?
More or less, I understand your question as, do you think the philosophical aspect of love is more deeper than sexual aspect? Something like that?
Yeah.
I was going to say it depends on the penetration, Since I'm sorry, since I couldn't control, since you used the word deeper, I couldn't control myself.
Oh, Orhan, you're going to be deported tomorrow morning.
Yes, but let's finish it before that.
One more question.
Your novel Snow, it's here.
Would you, Vishal, stand up?
Yeah. Your novel Snow is set in this town called Kars, Kars, almost entirely set in this one town. Have you been to that town? What was the experience of it?
My novels are always set in Istanbul, except one, Kars. Have I been there? Yes, many times. In fact, to write a novel, that I had also self-imposed myself to go to this northern eastern poor town, Turkish poor town of Kars. Then there's also Turkish. There are Kurds, other minorities, lots of history, layers of history, and it was one of the poorest towns of Turkey. in a manner that is not very unfamiliar to a Graham Greene manner. I self-imposed to myself that I would go to this small town, live there for a while, return back, live there for a while, and set a novel whose story was already in my head. So I went there. I did not live there for many, many years, but I went back and forth to the town to write a novel, to set a novel there deliberately with that purpose.
May I have a question here, please?
Yes.
Yeah. So, have you been watching the recent events in Pakistan? Do you see any similarity between your own experience in Turkey and the way the liberals are?
You know, I'm not very well versed with what's happening, in Pakistan, or let me talk about Turkey rather than making general comments. Yes.
Yeah, please ask.
What about the dissenter that we see in Snow, both from the pretensions of the state, as well as from the pretensions of the modernist? So what about that?
When you mean dissenter?
The dissenter in you we see very strongly.
A critic of the state.
The critic of the state that we see very strong. We've not heard in the session.
I
so we'd like to hear that.
Yes, I have found myself in political positions which I was not very happy about most of the time. I'm not too much interested in politics, but people are attacking, and I'm trying to protect myself, my dignity. Or you make an observation and you make a comment in an interview, not necessarily minding about too much about politics. But then these things got bigger and bigger and bigger. So the dilemma is not I am making and have a political agenda and thinking about how to save my country all the time. But then these things fall on you. Then you have to defend your words. You have to defend your integrity. Most of the time, it is a more personal, ethical thing. Politics in countries like mine, or most of the non-Western world, is something, if you fall into political situations or be a dissenter, not because I have visions and utopians or systematical dreams of future, but that you say something, they attack you, and most of the time you just defend your dignity and say things because there are so many things that is not acceptable by even the lowest standards of morality, so you'd better say something because it looks bad if you don't say anything.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Orhan Pamuk, writer and lover extraordinaire.
Let's give a very warm
Tehelka Picks
hand.
sign up.